Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our Only Murders in the Building, Season 3, Episode 8, reaction and review. Is Oliver Putnam dead? Did that actually happen? We got the info for you guys. This is a crazy, shocking, intense episode. One of the best that they've had all season long.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of knew that Oliver was going to end up in a spot where he had a second heart attack. They were really building up to, I mean, even at the beginning of this episode, it was like, here's a wrap up of what's happened. It's like, oh, well, that happened so many episodes ago. So clearly something is going to happen here.
Only Murders producers. I mean, this was a phenomenal episode. You should
Mhm.
not have included that in the montage at the start. It made it way too obvious what was going to be coming at the end.
Yeah, nobody has forgotten that he had that heart attack, and we all knew that something was going to be coming, but yeah, it could have been a bit of a better surprise.
No, I think that this episode, it really seemingly narrows down the suspects a lot, and it gives a particularly big suspect that you've been talking about for a while a substantial motive to the extent that we did not know about it before.
I see you, Robert Tobert, in that you just disappeared, had to go do some other work somewhere else right when the case was cracked, right when Greg was out of jail. All of a sudden, Tobert has some work. He had to go somewhere else. Well, that's convenient now that they're looking for the killer.
I'm taking a rope here. I'm just gonna try to lasso the bandwagon that you're on so I can climb on board it. At this point, I have been on the Cliff bandwagon. I've started to get off, and this is
There's a little bit of smoke around Donna and Cliff in this episode for all of you out there who are like, I just want to say that Donna's the killer. Little bit of smoke. I still don't think it's her, but a little bit of smoke.
okay. Well, we'll talk about all the smoke, all the theories, all the big stuff, Oliver's fate. Before we go further here, though, hit that subscribe button for more Only Murders in the Building coverage. We have 2 videos a week. We're going to have a preview for episode 9 up very soon, and we don't want you guys to miss that. And subscribing to the channel also helps us to be able to bring this content to you, and we're so appreciative of everybody who does.
Yeah, it really helps support the channel. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed and everyone who's going to subscribe. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about Oliver.
Yeah.
Is Oliver dead?
No. Okay, this is the thing here. Oliver is too beloved to this show. Martin Short is too beloved to this show. Very funny man Martin Short is going to rise from the ashes.
Yes, I agree. Tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
This is what I think is going to happen. I think that because the play is so stressful, he was already warned about this with his first heart attack that, the play might be too stressful. He went ahead with it anyways. It has been a very stressful ride for him. And now everything that was happening with Loretta's confession and to the murder and all of that, he's had this second heart attack. I feel like this is going to be the push that he needs to decide for himself that he's done with theater. This is his last rodeo, and that he's going to instead focus on the podcast, which is blowing up because we had Mabel put out that one podcast, which proved that Greg was not the killer. And then, everything has started to go crazy with that. So with the popularity of the podcast coming together, this might be something that the 3 of them are able to have a proper salary on to be able to stay at the Arconia.
Oliver, yeah, you don't need to do this to yourself anymore. It's not good for you. And I mean, my complaint about how they sort of set this up in the opening aside, it made sense that this was the time in which it happened, because he just says to Loretta, I love you.
Oh,
I know. I
ow.
trust you. It's okay. You don't have to tell me everything. I just want you to know that. And then minutes later, like really minutes later, she is up there saying, I did it. I'm the killer of Ben Glenroy. And regardless of whether or not Oliver thinks that's true, here is someone who he loves getting arrested. Simultaneously, he has lost a very important member of his cast right before the opening of the show. Like, this is the Sitzprobe, the orchestra is there. Everything is just going into full on dumpster fire mode, and he does not know what to do with himself.
Yeah, they're about to open.
Yeah.
Now Loretta's been arrested, gone. I mean, it's the play is going up in smoke. And I mean, we saw that Maxine was there and she was even like, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to give you my review yet,
Yeah.
but you're back," kind of thing. It was a really nice moment to see, and I think it was nice for Oliver to feel like he finally got himself back in the right direction.
Unfortunately, Oliver, them's the breaks when you're working on theater and you also have a main cast member die in the midst of your play. This is
Yeah.
a stressful endeavor. Now, I don't think that many of us believe at that point that Loretta is the actual killer. Like, it's just, there's a little bit of a motive, sure, but at the same time, this is all just her trying to protect Dickie. It's established that way on the show.
Yeah, I mean, the big prevailing theory all season has been that Dickie is her biological son. That all came out in this
Yes.
episode, that when Loretta was younger, she had Dickie. She gave Dickie up for adoption to this couple who then also had Ben, and we know the rest of the story there. So she ends up seeing him. She's following his career behind Ben and to be able to see him in all these pictures. She sees an opportunity to actually get to know him, so she auditions for Oliver's play, and now she's had this time with him, and she does decide that she's going to tell him. She writes him this letter
Yeah.
that she's going to give him, but everything goes haywire before she can. Now, let's talk about Charles and Mabel for a second.
Yeah.
Going through her bag. Now, I understand. I'm going to put on my hard hat.
All right. Okay.
I understand that they're doing whatever they can to figure out who the murderer is, and going through her bag. Yeah, I get it. And they're seeing all the connections. But to see a private letter that's sealed, that's like to Dickie, to open that letter and read that letter, jerk move.
It's
Like, I understand what they're doing, and I understand their desperation and their motivation, but like, come on.
it's like we can understand and still not like it. I think that's
Yeah.
sort of the vibe of it, is that yes, it is very, very invasive. Is it within these character, I guess, to do something like this? I can believe it. It's a little tough, but I can believe it just because how desperate they are to get some sort of answer. And I think for Charles, this motive is multiple different things. I think he wants this case to just be resolved and over with, because if he's having to do this play that he doesn't even necessarily really want to do, I don't think he wants this case to be hovering over it at the same time. And I think he wants to protect Oliver, his friend, and if something's going on with Loretta, he does want to know about it. I mean, you established this theory with Dickie and Loretta a while ago, so that part of the reveal that okay, it really is his biological mom, like that wasn't a surprise to me. I was surprised that he didn't know. I just thought for some reason that they had sort of forged a connection based around that this whole time.
I thought so too. I was really surprised that he didn't know, and that this was the episode where she was going to tell him, and that he had no idea, because in the last episode where
Mhm.
we had seen that he bought the hanky that had his brother's blood on it, it felt like there was a possibility that either he was involved and he wanted to get his hands on the evidence because, this is huge evidence, or he knew that maybe Loretta was involved and that her DNA might be on that. So he bought it to protect his mom, but he didn't know. Like, he
Yeah.
didn't know. He still doesn't know.
Okay, let's just get into the whodunit of it all here.
Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about the smoke on Donna before we move too far
All
away.
right.
There's been a few people in the comments that are like, it's Donna and Cliff, or some variation of that.
Yeah.
This is the first time, episode 8, where there's been any kind of smoke on Donna. No real motivation still. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be. I've seen, a couple comments about insurance, but I mean, that to me, it doesn't make sense. I don't know a lot about insurance, but like, if Ben dies, they don't get any insurance. If the play doesn't go on, they don't get any insurance. They just lose money. So, like, I don't really know what the motivation is, but it was interesting that there could have been sort of a double meaning going on here with the Donna Loretta conversation in the bathroom, where Donna was basically like, you'll do anything for your child,
Yeah.
sort of thing, where it's like, of course, we're all meant to think that this is about Loretta. And then she has this huge confession to, stop all the smoke around her son, to be like, okay, you know what? I did it. You can just take me instead. But there is some smoke on Donna saying something like that, because she was kind of saying it in a way for her as well, to be like, I would do anything for Cliff. So if that means burning this play to the ground, I will. If that means killing Ben, I will. It doesn't matter what it is, I will.
It's an interesting idea that, okay, maybe Donna could do it. It's just, you mentioned it, the motive.
Why?
Yeah, the motive just isn't there. And I've tried to cling on to this Cliff idea for dear life over these past few episodes, being just like, I still think Cliff did it. I still think Cliff did it. And it's still possible. There's just not a lot of time left. And you have to find a way to bring a compelling motive out of this. Like, the only thing that I can think of, and yeah, the insurance money part of this at this point doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it's also just been clearly established that Cliff really wanted this show to go on, and Donna's doing whatever she can in order to ensure that this happens. Now, if it's possible that, Ben and Cliff, that there was something between them acrimonious, whether there was some, I've talked about this theory that there was like some failed relationship and Cliff was heartbroken or something like that. I mean, did Donna kill Ben to try to protect Cliff on some level? Sure, but that's conjecture. There's no evidence of anything like that. And then you're getting into this idea now where, okay, clearly Cliff wanted the play to go on, but Ben is the big star. If you don't have Ben, how is the play going to go on? Cliff didn't know that Oliver was going to be able to change this into a musical. He could not have predicted the future. So for them to kill Ben, not knowing how they would continue the show after the fact, it's a big leap. And as much fun as it would be to have an unpredictable sort of conclusion to this season where it's so obviously pointing in the other way, I like the idea. I'm open to the idea. It's just, you have to have a reason that it makes sense. And I've been racking my brain over this for hours. I just can't think of one.
I can't anymore at this point either. If we go into episode 9 and 10 and all of a sudden they're going to be like, it's Donna, I'm not going to be happy. It's going to be a very different video where I'm just like, come on. Like, the show has been fairly good at giving you enough to be able to figure out it's Jan, it's Poppy. There was enough there, and it wasn't like episode 10, we'll give it to you now. There was enough. It wasn't always a lot, but there was enough. And this is the first time that I've seen any kind of smoke on Donna, where it's just like, and it's very little. Like, it really probably 99% is just her saying this to Loretta. So then that's a part of the push where she's like, I did it. It's, Mabel's like circling around Dickie. Everybody's circling around Dickie. Now here's the cops and they're taking away Dickie. No, I did it.
If they can find a way to give us like, oh, we said this in this episode and what, we just missed it or whatever, like, I can accept that, but it's difficult if the clues are like so unbelievably subtle that like everybody would have missed it at that point. And that's where it's just hard. It's hard right now with Donna and Cliff. And with my luck, Cliff will end up being the killer. And then
you have a big W.
I can't have a W. I've just jumped off the bandwagon in this episode. I'm going to be a flip-flopper, and I'm just going to have to stamp the big old L on my forehead for bailing on my own theory.
I am still, and even more, on my theory of Dickie and Robert Tobert. As I said at the beginning of this video, where you at, Robert Tobert? Very convenient that now that this podcast has come out, that's like, Greg is not the killer, that you're like, oh man, look at the time. I gotta go. I got another job. It was just like, oh, come on. Yeah. The cops are in here interviewing everywhere. Tobert's nowhere to be found. He's the guy doing the documentary who was with Ben the most. and he's nowhere to be found. It's just like you couldn't have made yourself any more obvious that you are somehow involved in this.
Yeah, I'm climbing aboard your bandwagon with this because there's another thing with Tobert that really made me go, oh, and that is the reason he was gone is he's doing a commercial shoot. And to me, this sort of symbolizes further, okay, why Tobert would kill Ben is just a measure of maybe he doesn't want to do that anymore. And having been out of the picture, I mean, yeah, maybe he didn't like Ben. Ben was a jerk, all these other sort of things. But he probably knew if I kill Ben and find a way to make sure that it never comes out that I did it, like this documentary is going to change my entire career. It's going to change my future. It's going to blow me up to completely new heights. And that's just such a strong, powerful motive. And when you combine that to what you just said, that he wasn't there for the SITS probe, it just really paints a picture of this is a guy who is desperate, who is smart. And this is my tinfoil hat theory on Tobert at this point. What if he knew that Ben was not going to be dead permanently from whatever happened to him? And as long as he made sure that Ben never found out that it was him who did it, he can still have the subject of his documentary alive, but he also has in here this near-death experience. He doesn't have to wander around thinking that he's a murderer. He's a smart guy. I think if he wanted to kill Ben, provided that he's the person who tried to do this, wouldn't you just like dump the largest amount of poison possible into whatever it is?
Yeah, because it was revealed in this episode that there was a cover up on this whole thing. We've been thinking that there's an allergy or something along those lines because they kept saying his blood is clean, tox screen clean, there's nothing in there. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, there was a big cover up. Okay, well, who was covering it up then? Was it Ben, who was kind of like, I don't want people to know that somebody's trying to kill me. So Dickie, I need you, you know, you're my cleanup guy. You're my fixer. Clean this up. Make sure everybody knows that it was just something I ate that killed me for an hour, you know, that kind of thing, which Dickie did. And Dickie has covered up for him a lot. So it's now more curious because now it is something that is like, okay, somebody specifically tried to kill him. We saw the rat poisoning KT's office. We saw the shredding of the paper where it's like, oh, maybe the killer shredded something and left it there, where I was just like, okay, well, would the killer shred something and leave it there? Probably not. They probably take it with them, but that's fine. But you know what I mean? But we now know that poison was somehow involved in this. It was said that it was in his shake, but maybe it was in the cookies. That hasn't really come back. I mean, there was a quick cookie mention in this episode, but it was really nothing.
I'm still on Team Cookies with some of this. Like the idea though that you mentioned this poison being in KT's office. This is important because this is to me probably why KT's office was locked. I think somebody was in there. They must have known that the rat poison was in there and they needed a chance to get their plan together, and maybe they saw the fight that was going on with Charles as the opportunity.
All right, tinfoil hat. I'm putting more tinfoil on.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay, so because you guys know, I think Robert Tobert did this, and he saw an opportunity when because I believe this whole time that he was there and he was filming that fight. That was his job. His job is to film everything. So it's opening night. Tobert would have been there and he would have been filming that fight. He would have filmed Charles punching him. Maybe he decided that he was the person that was going to write pig on the mirror because he's like, okay, you know what? If I'm going to poison him here at the theater, they've said it a couple times, and I think this is kind of a common knowledge that poison is more of a woman's way of killing somebody. And so if he wanted it to be something kind of like that, it's like, okay, I saw these two fight. I heard what she called him. I'm going to write this on the mirror. I'm going to use poison because poison is more of a woman's way of killing things. And there we go. And then that'll be the whole thing. And that's how it'll work out, where I'll have him dead or almost dead. And then I'll be able to make more money on my, documentaries. Will blow me up.
Can that just be the canon ending? Because that's really good. Like, I really think that's a compelling story that the show could craft. And it makes sense, because this is the thing, is that if Tobert is the murderer, the attempted murderer, I think they really have to frame it that he thought a lot of this through, and that the idea that he is quick on his feet enough to be like, okay, I can paint this and make it look like it's Loretta. Loretta clearly had some element of a motive, and then you're combining that with the idea of, okay, if this is cookies, it's something that you know that Ben is probably not going to be able to resist, something that he really, really loves, that he knows is bad for him, but he absolutely wants it. And it's a very small select group of people anyway who, one, know his eating habits, and two,
Mhm.
are close enough to him that they can do something to some of his food. Like, it would be weird if Kimber or Bobo or one of his other co-stars is in there like messing around with this stuff. It's like somebody like Dickie, like Tobert, like even Donna. It's kind of like, why is Donna like, messing around with Ben's food?
Okay, let's talk about the Dickie of it all because I
Yeah,
still feel he's guilty. Like, we're here in episode 8, and the idea that they've revealed that he's probably one of the killers isn't too surprising because I think that the big surprise is going to be surprise. There's another killer, and you guys didn't see that twist
yeah,
coming, that'll be the big twist. But that Dickie's the person who pushed him in the elevator. He knew about the hanky, he
yeah.
bought the hanky. Not a lot of people would have known really about the hanky. It's very suspicious to me that he bought that hanky. He had just sold off everything else from his brother, but he bought that very specifically. Like, it's too weird. And with this motivation now where he's kind of like, listen, this is how I felt about the situation.
Yeah.
This my whole life I've had to deal with Ben and feeling second best and having to be his, cleanup boy. And I've been treated really badly by him. My honest feeling when he died was a sense of relief. And then, the next day it's like, surprise, I'm not dead. And that dread came back over him that it could have been like a not premeditated, but just an opportunity that Dickie was just like, okay, no. Because when Ben came into that room and was like, you, there was only a few people that weren't in that room when he was pushing to the elevator. And
Mm.
Dickie was one of those people. He was like, you got a phone call.
Yeah. The list of suspects who did this, unless there was like some like, I don't know, warp speed movement by somebody else, and that seems kind of hard to buy. It's just there's not that many people who could have done it. I think it's for me, we're already covered in tenfold at this point. I think
I
it's
know.
to me it's impossible that Dickie did it the first time. Like he did not poison Ben just because of what he said about how he expected the next day he would get roped into something with Ben again. If he intended to kill Ben, he would never have said that. But then the line that really makes it hard for me to think it's anybody other than Ben who pushed him is just him saying, I couldn't take it anymore. And it's just that specific statement suggests that, okay, if you couldn't take it anymore, that implies that you had to do something to change this to keep it from happening. And either your choices there are you tell Ben, I quit, which probably wouldn't go over that well. You guys were already in the midst of some sort of fight anyway. We
Mhm.
don't know really what about.
Yeah, because he had also said they had a fight and that Ben was basically like, you're dead to me.
Yeah, and so it's either like you do that or you're killing Ben. There's not a lot of options. Now, is it possible that this fight is due to some sort of secret that Ben has that was causing a very massive problem and Dickie was calling him out on it and this other person could be the killer? Sure. But that's once again, there's not any real evidence of any of that at the moment, and that's sort of just where I'm landing with this, with the actual murder of Ben, where it's just there's not a lot of other suspects that are out there. And yes, there's a part of me that's like, okay, this is coming out too early that it's Dickie who is the second killer. There's still 2 episodes left. There's plenty of time for a twist. But like, where's the twist? Who else could have logically done this and made it there other than the people you have already said?
Yeah, the list is small, and I think that they're just hoping that not a lot of people are going to be circling around Robert Tobert, that he's just the love interest. But I mean, that actor has said that he doesn't really want to always just kind of play like the heartthrob.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to have something that's really interesting and a little bit, maybe a little bit devious, a little bit something else. And that could be this role. Okay, let's talk quickly here about where Mabel's living, because she's actually not living with Tobert.
Yeah.
She's out of her aunt's apartment and she's with Theo.
I like this. I like Mabel and Theo. I like their friendship. I'm bummed that we didn't get Theo actually in this episode, but this makes enough sense to me that she wouldn't want to leave the Arconia. I mean, the show, if Mabel's not in the Arconia, it doesn't feel right in the world to me. Maybe this isn't a permanent thing. We'll see what happens there, but what at least makes me happy about this episode is, one, she's still there. Two, it took a while, but they all got their hands in there. It seems like the podcast crew is coming back together, everybody.
Yeah, it was also really cool to sort of see how they figured out, Oliver and Charles had this plan together to be able to like get the interviews from Detective Williams. Oh my God, I was so glad she's back. She's so funny. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But to be able to get those interviews on camera, to bring them to Mabel, to show Mabel, listen, we weren't really here with it, but we are now. And we're bringing you, this really big, important thing that we did together to show you how in we are.
I really liked how they kind of put this together because, of course, in the process of all this and Charles is doing his nonsense with the weighted blanket, I was okay, obviously they're doing something here. There's some sort of game that they're trying to play. I still didn't piece all of it together though.
No.
Until the very end. Just look how clever you guys are, and look at you, Steve Martin, with this patter song that I have been hating for the past several weeks.
So good. It was so good.
It was good in this episode. Steve Martin really went for it. It was really believable. I thought it was very well done. And of course, it's just really funny that when the chips are down, he knows that he has to nail this at this point. Otherwise, Oliver is going to get caught. They set all of this up really, really well. I was worried, though, that at the end of it, it was like, oh, we forgot to turn the camera on or something like that they went through. I mean, I guess technically we still don't know what was actually on that camera, but I feel like they actually succeeded with it.
Yeah, but I don't know how much they're actually going to get out of that, because if Robert Tobert is the killer, he wasn't there. And I mean, it makes sense that he wouldn't be at the theater because there's no one to do a documentary on anymore. He got fired from that. It's over, whatever. But just the same, it is kind of interesting that he hasn't come up as somebody that Detective Williams would want to talk to. The person that was following Ben around, like, he's the guy.
This is just what's so interesting to me. It's like, for me right now, there's only 4 suspects. There's Robert Tobert, there's Dickie, there's Donna, there's Cliff. Like, there's just... Kimber has basically been a ghost for the past several weeks.
It's not Kimber.
No, it's clearly not Kimber.
It's not Loretta.
It's not Bobo, who has also been gone and had a brief little appearance in this episode.
Yeah, I still don't feel like it's KT either. Like, the rat poison being in her office is not that surprising because we met Jerry, who's living up in the attic, and there's rats everywhere. I mean, it feels like everyone would have something like that around because clearly it's a problem.
Yeah, and for all the years that I've spent watching like late night talk shows based in New York City, I have heard so many jokes about rat infestations. It's not, apparently this is just a thing in New York. So it's like, okay, you know what? That's fine. But before we wrap it up, can we give just a tiny little round of applause here for the way that Detective Williams showed up? This was the moment in this episode that made me laugh the hardest. It's just like right when everything is about to come up, she opens, declares something. This was my equivalent of the stress dancing from Cliff the week before, where I didn't see it coming and it just made me crack up.
She was so on. Her comedic timing has always been so good, but she was so on in this episode.
Yeah, like, mystery aside, and maybe it's becoming clear, maybe it's not. Maybe we'll all be shocked at the end of all of this, but this is, I think, a really good episode that furthered a lot of stories that clearly gave us a lot to talk about as we're sitting here almost 30 minutes into this review.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who reached the end of this review with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
There was
thank
a
you
lot to
guys.
go over.
Yeah, I know. This is good. Only Murders is better when it is like this, but hit that subscribe button for more Only Murders in the building. It
Yep.
helps the channel very, very much, and make sure you don't miss anything else. And we'll see you guys here next time.